Hello everybody, welcome to the Australian Consulting Space Insurance Society 2018 online audits. My name is Paul Mather, I am the General Manager of Acsis. Today's presentation should take about 20 to 30 minutes, something like that. The audit this year is a little bit different in that there's this webinar or this presentation to watch with about 10 questions to answer at the end of it, and then about 45 to 50 questions as per previous years following it of a general nature. The main topic of today's presentation is risk management. Thank you for participating in this online audit. We think this audit is of tremendous value. It mainly will highlight and focus on risk management today. Risk management is a very, very important part of everybody's practice. And if we all practice good risk management, hopefully we won't get into some of the problems that we do. Having said that, these problems can happen to anybody. It's not a very good thing at the time, but it certainly happens to everybody sometimes if they're around, if they do enough surveys and do enough work, do enough practice, or do enough consulting in either engineering or town planning. These type of issues do certainly happen at times. Today, we'll have a quick look at why you can be sued, some 2017 and 2018 claims data, and some comments at the end about risk management. Today, there are a couple of short videos in the presentation with sound. The reason why I've done this is to just make it a bit more interesting so you don't have to listen to me the whole time. There will be some examples of unmanaged risk, partially managed risk, and fairly well managed risk as well. So they're just a bit of difference to show examples of those three levels of risk behaviour. We'll move right into the start of the presentation. We all use disclaimers. Acsis Limited as an entity uses disclaimers, cautionary notes, explanatory notes, etc., on all of their documentation. Disclaimers are very useful because it allows the practitioner to make a statement about the quality or the accuracy of their work, the purpose and intention of their work, and who the work is intended to use and what limitations go around that work. So using disclaimers and cautionary notes, explanatory notes are still a very good idea. The material presented is of a general nature in this presentation to promote discussion amongst interested parties. It is not intended to provide complete discussion or any specific advice. Seek your own advice on specific matters or give us a bit of a call after this presentation if you've got any detailed questions. And of course, the two gentlemen in the slide, they're doing surveys, so they're happy, although they don't look like they're particularly hysterically happy, but surveys equals happiness. I'm often asked when I'm travelling around Australia, why are surveyors a target? Why can anybody sue you? Why am I being sued even though I've committed no wrong? There's been no fault, there's been no negligence, no error in the survey, no error in the engineering design or the project management, or the town planning to do, or the environmental management, bushfire management to do with the site that's being worked on. But they still find themselves in these situations. The reason why is there's this general law in Australia called torts law. A tort is a breach of duty. It's owed to the whole world, so everybody gets caught up in this. Torts serve to protect a person's interest in his or her, in our case, tangible property and financial resources. Surveyors and spatial scientists, spatial people, surveyors don't get too involved in reputation and those type of, or bodily security or those other matters. It is redressable by an action for compensation, usually in the form of unliquidated damages. Before you ask, we should really talk about what unliquidated damages are. That's the important bit for members of the society. The definition of unliquidated damages are sums of money that cannot be foreseen or assessed by a fixed formula, is established by a judge or jury. So in most jurisdictions in Australia, if there is a claim against the insured. It usually, if it goes to court, is heard by a judge. The job of both sides is to convince the judge of the wrongdoing and who's responsible for that, and to assess the damage. Surveyors place plans on the public record and endorse those plans. Those plans are easily sourced by the general public or anybody. So for a small search fee, you can find out who did the work on the land, your land, their land. You can find that out years later. So surveyors and especially licensed, registered or accredited surveyors are particularly visible in the public spectrum. Also too, surveyors are known professionals who usually carry PI insurance. For example, on a building site, they're well and truly known to be the ones who are, in most cases, the most professional people on site who are actually doing the work. Moving right on to some claims figures for the society. This is a bit of general background. For those people who have seen some of the talks that Acsis does around the country, we do cover this type of information and we update it all the time. There were 66 notifications of claims for the 2017 calendar year. It does not include alerts. This represents 16 per 100 insured. These are figures just for the society, by the way. The notifications and claims were predominantly on the eastern seaboard. The eastern seaboard dominance reflects the demographic of the profession. Basically, it's where probably the largest capitals are, and obviously takes in Brisbane, Sydney, the East, Canberra, Melbourne, and those states. With great respect to the other states, there's plenty of activity in those states as well, but the eastern seaboard tends to capture most of the work. Claims are very much related to the economic activity in Australia, and the type of work being completed is always reflected in notifications and claims. If there's a lot of planning going on at the moment, then we get planning claims. If there's a lot of construction going on, we get construction claims. And again, this is just reflected it's just for the society, but it's reflected in the profession across Australia. Now, drilling down to what are the claims categories. You can see from this chart that cadastral is the second biggest claims category. Construction, engineering set out, building set out, anything to do with a building site, construction site, highway, high rise, low rise, it doesn't matter. It is predominantly the biggest area of dispute at the moment, the biggest area of exposure for the profession. The other avenues of activity tend to sort of just fall into the background there. Moving on to the percentages, you can see that cadastral is 20% and moving down to construction and engineering set out 41%. This is for the calendar year 2017. Moving on to claims to year date 2018. Again, you can see cadastral and detail have sort of slipped into the background a bit further, but again, predominantly construction engineering set out is the major area of concern. Moving on to the claims categories. Again, this just reflects the last slide with this pie chart. Cadastral 13%, detail survey 16%, and predominantly the largest area has been for the last 3 or 4 years construction and engineering set out. There has been a boom in residential and major project construction in this area. A bit of detail around those charts. The historical average is 17 claims per 100 insured. This is 35 years of claims and notification data held by the society, so it's a pretty good data set. The 2017 result of 16 claims per 100 insured is very close to that historical average. We keep that historical average updated simply so that we can see if there's any emerging trends as we analyse the data all the time. 2015, 16 and 17, the claims for construction and engineering set out accounted for a significant proportion of the claims, with cadastral claims being the next major area of litigation. 2015, 2016, construction and engineering set out claims averaged slightly above 50%. This dropped to 41% in 2017, year to date 2018, 47%. So you're basically seeing a very, very consistent, over the last 4 or 5 years, trend of construction engineering set out claims to be between 40 to 50% of all claims. This is the reason why we're going to be concentrating in this presentation on the risk of those claims. Cadastral claims still tend to be long-tailed, historic and varied, so they tend to be claims that are meets and bounds movements in the cadastre that have caused a problem, like an encroachment between zero setback construction, stuff like that. The amount of dollars in the last 3 years has dropped to a normal level, which is very pleasing. There was a disaster year in 2014 when $13.5 million with another $1 million in legals went out the door in 3 claims just for society members. That was a pretty bad year. The years before that and the years, hopefully in the future, won't be like that. Just reinforce the fact that this, I'm not trying to sound like I'm lecturing to anybody, but these type of claims notifications can happen to any practitioner at any time. They really can. Anybody can get caught into this web, even if there's no negligence committed, there's no error, but people can still get scattergunned and caught into this net of litigation. A deeper analysis now of construction engineering set out claims for the 15, 16 and 17 years. The reason why I'm going to do this now for a couple of minutes is just simply because, as I said, about 40 to 50% of all claims are surrounded or are in this area of the work done by the profession. So it's really quite important to sort of drill down a little bit and see what some of them were about. 12% of them, there were no errors in the job. In other words, they were false claims against the surveyor. There was no problem. 6%, basically there was a wrong bearing used for a set-out grid, or maybe where the house was located, or something was wrong. There was a bearing dialed in somewhere. 6% there were error in connecting data sets within the site, so stage 1 didn't quite fit with stage 2. Errors in marking grid lines. For example, grid line F was being put on a high-rise site, for example, but somebody on site wrote E instead of F, and you can see the error there that basically works start appearing in the wrong spot. 6% set out over easements. So this is where nobody from the owner to the surveyor to everybody else, the architect, knew that there was an easement on the site. Basically, there was construction over that easement, and it was revealed later that this was the case. So it's a really good idea to get good search, and the surveyor is seen as the expert who knows about land matters. 24% errors in plan interpretation. Surveyors weren't, and practitioners, they weren't quite sure of some of the dimensions, for example, on architect's plans. We know how reliable architect's plans are. So if you're unsure, seek further instructions and really get somebody else, if you can, to tell you what those dimensions are and where things go if you're unsure. 40%, this is the biggest category of errors in calculations leading into incorrect set out. So basically there was something wrong in the calcs. With modern survey method, the work is calculated in the office, which is a very good way of doing it. Sometimes you go out on site and you do the work, and the error is in the job before you leave the office. Construction engineering set out accounts for about half of all claims. So let's just have a quick discussion about how some of those claims could have been, or some of those errors, some of that negligence, some of those problems may have been picked up on site. In the old days, people used to carry fill bags. They used to have offset tapes in those fill bags. And when they place marks, like boundary marks, boundary pegs, they do a remark, a re-establishment, a redefinition. They would basically mark the boundaries and they would note the improvements on their field notes. Now, when you're doing engineering construction set out, if there's a fence and the house, for example, in a simple example, is supposed to be a metre from the boundary, and you're quite satisfied that the occupations are okay, you might have measured 20 metres across the back fence or something like that. So you're fairly happy the occupations are okay. You may have located the front corners where the fences are, if there are any. So you're fairly happy the occupations are okay. For a simple example, the house is supposed to be a metre off the boundary. There's a fence there. Pull out the offset tape and measure the metre. Some of the claims that we have dealt with, those type of errors could have been found with that very simple independent check. Moving on to perhaps larger construction where you set out grid lines. You might have a 30-metre tape with you. There's the grid lines being set out and marked on site. Obviously, somebody else has done that, but they've probably come from the survey. You can see a tripod in the background there. Well, if you've got 5 metres between grid lines, not a bad idea, 10 metres between grid lines, to pull out your 30-metre tape and just do a quick check, make sure everything seems to be okay. And as I've said, many of these errors that we've analysed were detectable by an independent check with a very simple measuring device called a tape. What appears to be missing sometimes with some of this work is that last 15 minutes where you basically step back and have a look at what you've done and try to do an independent check aside from your very excellent equipment and just get confident that the job is right. What I'm going to do now, let's have a little bit of fun. It's a bit of a short video. This is a promotional video from that I came across from a survey company in South Africa. It's a bit of a fun video, but just have a bit of a look. Can you see an offset tape anywhere in this particular piece of vision? I know it's, as I said, a promotional video, but again, it probably reflects very, very good survey practice. We'll just roll right on with it.
Everybody got time for that. Everybody got time for that. Everybody got time. Everybody got time. Everybody got time for that. Everybody got time for that. Everybody got time for that. Everybody got time. Everybody got time. Everybody got time for that. Stop. You're making a sound. Don't think of writing it down. If the word gets out, you're gonna go to jail. We got things to say. Don't take our words away. Transparency, it's our right to see your games. You got aeroplanes, blue light brigade for a family name. Bring the Air Force in, there's gonna be a fire. We wanna know who paid who passed the message through. Jumbo jets, friends with benefits. Sing with me this melody. Oh, ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time, anybody got time, anybody got time for that. Anybody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time, anybody got time, anybody got time for that. When driving to work, it takes its toll. Spend your paycheck driving home. Please Jay-Z up my salary for a bride. Split up 2 days drilling holes. Backstage, you little moles. Justin B ain't as rich as me. Everyone at FMB say, ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time. Ain't nobody got time. Anybody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time. Ain't nobody got time. Ain't nobody got time for that. Rewind the times that were violent, how we stood and fought through the silence. Consumption, corruption, confined in a nation we fought to survive in. How can we survive when we pay more for mileage from mansions and coastlines that boast our retirement? So what's next? Does Robert Duck have to put it in context? Time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time. Anybody got time. Anybody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time. Anybody got time. Anybody got time for that.
As the song said, hopefully everybody's got time to do those small independent checks at the end of the job just to make sure everything's okay. Now we're going to move on to spending a little bit of time talking about risk management. There's going to be 3 small videos which show 3 types of very risky behaviour. One of them is totally unmanaged. The second one is partially managed risk with some controls. And the third video is still a risky behaviour, but very well managed with very good outcomes. And that's what I think is the analogy with the surveying and spatial profession, that we can manage risk and we can have some good outcomes. Obviously, the picture on the left there shows not terribly good management of the risk of entering into a confined space. I think we can all do a little bit better than that. We'll then move straight on to the first little video.
Let's get some of that shit. Okay.
That was certainly very risky behaviour. Let's now move to the basis of risk management. We all manage risks consciously or unconsciously, and we do it all the time, every time we go out the front door. Managing risk is an integral part of good business practice. It's also an integral part of quality management. How do we manage risk in our practices? That's a very good question. Managing that risk requires awareness, thought and discipline, and especially discipline for every job for every day as the community and our clients expect professionals to be 100% correct 100% of the time. Risk management techniques range from not going out of your front door to accepting the risk from everybody all of the time or 100% of that risk. Good PI cover transfers the business entity's risk, otherwise loss, to the insurer for a fee, being the premium. PI cover is not a substitute for good surveying, planning and engineering practice. Remember that it's you who is being sued, not the insurer. It is up to you and your staff to maintain quality as best you can at all times. We'll now go on to the second video, which is still a risky behaviour, but perhaps with this one there's some more controls than the first video. I'm not sure that I'll be doing that sort of bike riding anytime soon. Some thoughts to minimise your risk. How you interact with your staff, how you supervise them and train them is very important, very, very important in making sure that they follow the procedures and practices of your company and yourself. What we say and how we say it to everybody, especially our clients, what promises we make. How do we document activities and keep records? Very important that you do that. When you do find yourself in a bit of spot of a bother, you need to have those documents to allow the people to help you to mount a defence. You need to have some records. How do we manage our work in progress and our debtors ledger? Quite often the financial aspects of a site impact upon litigation and how people get sued. They might not want to pay the last progress claim, or they might have loss on a job, and they might hold you accountable for that loss in delays and those type of matters. Quoting and estimating, I can't emphasise enough fees. If you charge a correct and appropriate professional fee, then you can do a professional job. How we manage our client and our client relationships. Very important that your client knows what promises you made, what expectations he has, and what you've virtually promised to him to deliver that professional service. Communication with our clients, so letting him or her know that there's a problem with the development approval, that there's a problem with the planning matter, or there might be some issue that will impact upon that person's project. Explanatory notes and disclaimers we've already discussed. File retention. I know there are statutes of limitations to how long you can keep your files, how long you're supposed to keep your files. Problem is, if you get rid of your files too early and something happens, there's no record or documentation to find out what exactly went on. Education of all members of the firm. Very important that all members of the firm are actively engaged in risk management and it's the forefront of them in their minds. And of course, anything else you can think of. We'll move on to the last video, which shows, again, a highly risky activity, but it's well managed and the outcomes are generally pretty good.
so good.
Every day, escape the ordinary. Just some final thoughts. This is based on some claims analysis over the years. Some observation, and this is my opinion only. The current survey equipment is very excellent. It's beautiful survey equipment, very much fit for purpose, very confident and very, very good equipment. That survey method and the use of that equipment is probably appropriate and certainly gets the job done, there's no doubt about it. In some cases, the last part of the survey using independent checks is missing that important 15 minutes at the end of the job just to stand back and say, have I done what I've done? Does it make sense? Doesn't matter if you are doing construction engineering set out, you're doing a cadastral job, or whether or not you're doing some engineering design, engineering set out, planning matters. At the end of the day, if you just sit back and say, is the work I'm producing suitable? Does it make sense? Does it seem right? This one is an oldie, but still a goodie. The letters at the top have numbers represented below. So if you do that, add up those numbers with those letters, then knowledge will get you 96%, hard work will get you 98%, attitude, and in this case, in today's presentation for this online seminar, is mainly around risk management, will get you 100%. Moving on to the final slide now. There's an image of obviously some negligence. It's not a true image, it's obviously bodged up. There's an image of, I think it's a beaver, where there's some bad results in that particular activity. The bottom image on the left-hand side shows some fairly risky behaviour. So the first slide shows negligence. The one on the left shows risk at the bottom, and we all know that there are consequences to those actions. Negligence, risk, and consequence. They're things that we should all have, hopefully in the back of our minds every day of the week. Thank you very much. That ends the presentation. Please proceed with the rest of the 2018 Acsis Limited online audit. Thank you and have a good day.